Hello and welcome to Revising for Exams in English Literature with me, Matthew Martin. This presentation is aimed particularly at my first-year students. And the first thing you need to think about is that you don't just revise the texts, you revise with questions, with particular questions. You look for the past questions from past exams, from past essay titles. These are the things that give you guidelines as to what you should be focusing on. Then you can proceed with confidence. The exam is not intended to throw a curveball at you or to spring a surprise upon you. It is intended to give you an opportunity to show off what you know and how good you are at arguing coherently with evidence from the text. So here are the main things. First, you have to decide which text are you going to write on, and it doesn't really matter. Just pick two and go for it. Then you have to gather together past exam questions on those authors. And as Hamlet is saying here, alas, poor Yorick, where can I find past exam titles? Well, he says, try Queens Online or go to our library. The librarian can help you. It's easy enough to track these down. Organize your notes then according to key themes and arguments that we've talked about during the year. And then you start collecting quotations from primary and secondary text. So the primary text would be, say, Hamlet. The secondary text would be a critic writing about Hamlet. But here's the key thing. You're only gathering those quotations in relation to specific themes and arguments. So deciding on your text, the only thing you have to think about is that the handbook tells us that you can't write on any author that you've already written an essay on. So if you wrote an essay on Plato, don't write on Plato in the exam because you'll get a 0 for it. Okay? So pick your two authors and texts, and then you can get to work and start preparing. Clear enough? I hope so. Does it matter which text you pick? Not really. They're all of equal difficulty. There are pros and cons to each. I know some students get themselves tied up into knots trying to decide which text should I do. Trust me, doesn't matter. And the more time you spend debating your choice, the less time you have to actually prepare. So let's say we choose the following. We take Milton's Paradise Lost and Shakespeare's Hamlet. There, done. Nothing more to worry about. Now we can start our revision properly. And Milton is all delighted. He says, boy, that's a relief. I feel better about this exam already. Plus, I'm pleased I made the final list. Okay, so just pick and then move forward. So let's take Hamlet as an example. First step, let's gather some past questions. So we'll put here a few questions. One says, Hamlet is a play about the seeming conflict between philosophy and action. Or, Hamlet is a particularly self-conscious play. It's acutely aware of its own theatricality. Okay? Or we could look at past essay titles. Hamlet is a play about identity. It asks probing questions about how we can know others and even know ourselves. Or Hamlet is a play concerned on several levels with doubt, suspicion, and skepticism. So there, we've gathered a few titles. Now we can start work. So the next thing you have to do is you have to pick out what are the key terms in those questions. I recommend you don't pick any more than 3 for any particular question. Sometimes it could be only 2, at a stretch, maybe 4, but you really start to lose focus then because we're trying to prioritize what to put our effort into. So we don't want to have too many things. So have a go and see if you can pick out the key terms in each of the questions below. And then you can pause this presentation now until you've selected your key terms, and you can check them against my choices in the next slide. So there are 3 titles. Go ahead and pause the presentation. See if you can underline maybe 2 words in each title and see if we get the same choice. Okay, here we go. Let's find out. Okay, I underlined philosophy in action in the first one. Hopefully you did the same. The second one, I underlined the phrase self-conscious. What does it mean for a play to be aware of itself or conscious of itself as a play? And I highlighted the word theatricality because there's an awful lot of stuff in Hamlet that is about acting. I mean, they put on a play inside the play. Hamlet has a big discussion with one of the players, tells him how to act. It's a play that's all about being a play. So that one seems straightforward enough. Or the last one, doubt, suspicion, and skepticism. Well, those are three terms, but really they mean pretty much the same thing. Those are terms that just describe the whole atmosphere of this play. So we then take those terms, put them in a list, and then we know these are the ideas around which we want to start gathering evidence from the play. And I use a separate stack of pages for each of these topics. I'll have one labeled philosophy versus action, and all my notes on that are there. I'll have another one labeled self-conscious theatricality, and all my notes are there. And some of the notes overlap because these themes are all connected. But once you get all these notes put together, then you don't have to keep going back to the play. So here you can see some handwritten notes on key theme number 1, philosophy versus action. And I've written, well, Hamlet's a procrastinator. Remember he says, the play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. I thought that was a good quote to put in because that's Hamlet pretending he's taking action. But he's not. He's supposed to kill Claudius. What's he doing? He's putting on a drama. He's putting on a play. So that's hardly action. It's more acting. It's more of him thinking about things. It's more of his philosophical inquiry as to, ooh, I wonder, can I prove that Claudius is guilty? It's like your dad came back from the dead, presumably, and told you he's guilty. Get on with it. Take action. So even when speaking to the ghost, he says he will act. This is another quote I chose. Hamlet says he'll act with wings as swift as meditation or the thoughts of love. Look at that simile. How quickly am I going to act? I'm going to act as quickly as I think about things, as swift as meditation. Even in his language, he can't get down to taking action. It's crazy, okay? So you see what I'm doing. I'm putting down key quotes and making points about them that connect back to the key theme. So in the end, you want to have reduced all your reading, notes, and ideas into little packets of quotes and ideas which constitute like mini essays. So, there's one on philosophy versus action. There's a packet of notes on self-conscious theatricality. And there I threw in a quote from a completely different play. I said, all the world's a stage is a line from As You Like It. And I'm going to tie that into Hamlet. Or here's notes on doubt, suspicion, and skepticism. I just made the point here that Hamlet studied at Wittenberg. That's a key point to the context of all this doubt, because Wittenberg is where the Reformation started, which was people doubting the Catholic Church. So clearly, he comes from a background of doubt and skepticism. So now you've got all your little packets of notes, regardless of whether the question refers to action, philosophy, doubt, skepticism, whatever. You can start to create an essay out of these building blocks because these notes are all connected to each other. I mean, the themes are connected. So each little set of notes becomes a Lego brick that you can then clip together in the exam hall to complete your essay. And it just means that you're flexible, you're thinking, you can rearrange the Lego bricks, but you have your evidence lined up, ready to go. So just remember that your notes always need to be aiming to connect quotations, ideally from the primary text, that is the literature, but also from critics, to the key themes. Don't just collect random quotes. They are useless. They all have to tie in to those themes. So if the theme you're working around is Hamlet and doubt and suspicion and all that, you're not going to open your essay with this quote. This is the most random quote. Listen to this. Goethe said that Shakespeare meant to represent the effects of a great action laid upon a soul unfit for the performance of it. What? Could that be any more irrelevant? I mean, maybe that would be relevant if you were talking about philosophy in action, because Goethe, the great German critic, was saying it's like Hamlet just wasn't capable of action, the action that was expected of him. But if you start your essay with something like that, it's just clear you're not thinking, you're just throwing stuff down that you had ready-made, okay? So say the question is about Hamlet and suspicion. Well, this would be a great quote to open with. When Hamlet meets his former school friends, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, he quickly discovers that they have been sent for, and then he sees them as part of the conspiracy arranged against him, and he refers to them as snakes. And here's the quote, "My two schoolfellows whom I will trust as I will adders fanged." He says, I wouldn't trust these guys any more than I would a snake. Okay, that captures how even those closest to Hamlet have to be doubted, and he suspects them, even his own mother. Okay, so this is a quote connected directly to the theme in the question. It quotes the primary text. It's a winner. So this approach to making sure that your quotes always connect to key themes also lends focus to your outside reading, that is the critical reading. You don't need to read everything written about Hamlet, that would be crazy. You're looking for good resources that will help you with those specific key themes or give you enlightening background information that relate to those key themes, not just random background information. You want to make interesting connections to those themes in interesting ways. Okay, so if you were to go pick up this book of essays on Hamlet, you do not want to read all of it. You want to go through it and look for those essays that touch upon our key themes. Okay, so one of the questions I had from a student was, do you have to quote critics in the exam? And my answer to that was, well, no. I have, on very rare occasions, read first-class answers that made no reference to critics. I could maybe count on one hand the number of exams I've seen do that in 20 years. So you get it? It's rare. But I suppose I'm wondering, why wouldn't you want to quote critics? I mean, wouldn't you want to know what professional critics have to say about the themes you're studying? I mean, that's their job. Presumably, they're going to make some really effective points about the text that you haven't thought of. They'll probably point out good quotes from the text that you missed. I'm guessing they would. Now, does this mean you should use a crowbar and push some critic's quote into your essay, whether it's relevant or not? Definitely no. Nobody's counting how many critics you quote. It's not a numbers game. They're only reading to see if your argument makes sense, provides evidence, and shows signs of meaningful thinking. Another question, what if the themes you've revised don't come up in the exam? Then you didn't study all the themes available to you in the past papers. That's just flat out the case. The exam will not contain surprises. The exam might be worded slightly differently, but it will touch upon the key themes we've covered. Furthermore, not every theme you prepare is going to come up explicitly in the title, but they're all linked. You can connect them logically and interestingly, just as we did today, where we connected a question on skepticism, say to background in Wittenberg, or questions of identity. You know, are Rosencrantz and Guildenstern truly his friends, or is, you know, Gertrude really behaving like his mother? They all link. And as I've said before, it's not like an A-level exam where you sit and hope, will Ophelia or Polonius get mentioned in this year's question? It's not that kind of a game. The question will always focus on general themes, and then it's up to you to show off what you know and to demonstrate how well you can link your knowledge to the question. Another question, how do I know if I'm covering all the themes that I should be covering? Well, because you've checked past papers. Secondly, because you took good notes all year and you've gone through and covered the notes there. Thirdly, because you're working in a group with other students and you're supporting each other in your preparation, so you're double checking each other. And lastly, because you emailed me to ask and discuss it. That's how you know. If you're off on your own in isolation and you're struggling, that may not be a good way to approach this. Another question, when quoting the primary text or critics, do you have to cite things the way we would do in an ordinary coursework essay? The answer is no. Do your best to give your sources as clearly as you can, but you're not going to be marked as to whether you've used MLA style or not. You just do your best because it's an exam. Another question, when I do quote, does the quote have to be completely accurate? No. Do your best to make them accurate, but small errors will not be marked down significantly. I mean, come on, if you're quoting to be or not to be, you should get that right. You should spell Shakespeare right. You should spell Hamlet right. You know, try to be accurate, but no, it's not a memory test in that way. So, exams are so much fun now that I know how to revise effectively. And she says, right, note to self, lie and tell chat the party's been canceled. Okay, you get the idea. We know how to revise, but next we have to ask ourselves, what do you actually do in the exam hall? Well, go on and find out in part 2. Thank you for listening, and good luck with your exam.